This is the 7th video in my series on outgrowing old worldviews that no longer serve. And in the last video, we got to start on what would it mean to build a new worldview, both for ourselves, which I refer to as a charm way in my work, and also collectively, if we all got together to build new stories, because the old stories are broken. And as a result, we're breaking the world and each other too. We need better stories to navigate by. How do we do that? So I recommended 5 attitudes to get started with, open-mindedness and some other ones. And for this, I wanted to talk about what goes into my own worldview just as one example of how to get a start on this. I mentioned animism, which I really like as a playful idea. Play was one of the attitudes, one of the 5 attitudes. So, and part of the reason for play, by the way, is that there's this over-focus, especially in the West, but other places too, on absolutes, absolute truth, absolute belief. And these are defensive structures that lead to conflict and paranoia. Our stories don't have to be absolute. They can be inspiring. They can be fun. Just so long as they bring us together and help us live on the planet and in this remarkable cosmos that we're in. So in that spirit, I like animism. I've done work on it. I've written a lot about it. You can read my book, Parapsychological Inquiry, if you want. Made some free YouTube videos. So I won't say more about that here, but let's talk ethics a bit. So I don't know about you, but there's 2 things that often happen, 2 moves that are often made in ethics that just make my mind go insane. And one of them is when people start from this absolutist psychology giving orders. You know, you must do this and you must do that, and I command you to do this. I just can't hear that. I'm an adult. I can make up my own rules. So, you know, as long as they help me live with other people and not harm others. So on the one hand, I don't tend to respond well to that. And, you know, I heard too much of it in Sunday school by people who never lived what they taught us. And on the other hand, these philosophical systems, especially the Western ones, or global North, if you want to call them that, you know, these big things based on all these abstract principles, I can't think like that. I need it to be practical, and I need to be able to live it, right? So there's a term that's used in philosophy that we can make very specific and livable. It's called virtue ethics. And what it means, in short, is that ethics don't depend on abstract rules and principles so much as they depend on having good character. So if you're raised by halfway sane people who care about each other and about other people, and if you're taught to be able to use empathy and imagination to take the place of others so that you don't harm them and in fact uplift them, you'll probably do okay ethically. And there are situations where you got to make hard calls, but there's no rule book that's going to lay it all out for you. That's part of being an adult person, is to be able to navigate through ambiguous situations where there is no totally right answer. So in terms of virtue ethics, I'm thinking not only of let's switch cultures, Confucius and Mencius in particular, the Chinese philosopher Mencius, but all those traditions that say if you care, then that should be your guiding light. If you care for people, if you are concerned about what happens to people, that they do well, that they get enough to eat, that they have safety, that they have things that nourish the spirit, then that's the basis for your ethics. And that's something that carries across cultures. It looks different in different cultures, but it's a basic human norm. So that serves me for a sense of ethics. The golden rule has appeared in various incarnations throughout philosophies, religions. Basically, treat people like you would want them to treat you. Seems like a good rule. So that is the basis, if we wanted to put it in terms of a principle. There's Western philosophers who talk about this, including Immanuel Kant. I don't particularly like his way of framing it, but he gets kind of to the same place. So That might be a good part of the worldview too. So now we've got animism, we've got care, and I want to add one more, imagination as a wisdom path. So I mentioned in a previous video that a lot of what people seek in looking for a worldview they can live in is some kind of tradition. The tradition that I live and work in is called Hermeticism. It goes way back to ancient Egypt. It has taken many forms down the centuries. I wrote about it in my second dissertation, which is called Restoring Your Lore. And a basic definition of Hermeticism is it's the kind of path where you clarify speech and consciousness and your relationships with other people in order to behave wisely in the world. There's more to it than that. That's an oversimplified explanation. But in this tradition, imagination is a form of knowing. And my dissertation traces that. It ends up in Islamic gnosis, in romanticism of the European variety, especially poetry and philosophy, in Carl Jung's psychology, in alchemy as a wisdom tradition, not just an attempt to make gold. But in all of this, imagination is described as a practice for knowing the world more deeply, especially through the heart, which some of the old Gnostics call cardionosis, knowing of the heart, wisdom of the heart. So knowing that way should be part of any worldview that I would call home, knowing through imagination. The same traditions, by the way, warn against the misuse of imagination, because if we don't have a conscious relationship to our imaginings and feelings and dreams that are based on imagination, then imagination turns demonic. So there's a cautionary too. There's an old saying from alchemy, the magical wizardly spirit that animates the alchemical work is sometimes called Mercurius. Not the same as the trickster, but similar name. And so about this, the spirit of the work is talking to whoever wrote this down. And it says about itself, for healthful I can be, but also poisonous. So imagination consciously applied as a path of wisdom, that would be part of my worldview too. So next time, more of this. What else should go in there? What else would be good for a workable worldview?